top of mind when I write messaging is how do I lead with an offer that's compelling and salient enough that it doesn't look like another pitchy, generic, hey, let's hop on a 15-minute call email that everyone else gets. You know, everyone gets dozens of emails say, hey, can I hard sell you for 15 minutes? I promise I won't make it too painful. The barometer here that I suggest anyone use is what I call standalone independent value. So does your value add offer standalone value that someone would actually pay for?
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by the most excellent Chris Marin. Chris is the CEO and founder of convert.ai. And rather than me making a mess of what they do and who he is, Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to in the world?
I'm Chris. I run convert.ai, and we generate new business for B2B clients, either SaaS or services. We bring new clients into the door for them week in, week out. I've been doing it 8 years. I have about a decade of experience doing cold outbound outreach over the phones, over email, over the socials. So, it's based on the work that I've done when I used to run marketing for a couple of venture-backed companies. One was a Series A stage company, and they were backed by Brad Feld and Foundry Group. And the other one was actually a company that had raised $60 million. They were Series B, and they had 100 people. So, they brought me in and said, it's up to you to bring in clients in the door so we can raise our next fundraising milestone. And, it's in so many words, feed the mouths of our 100 employees. So no pressure, right? I tested everything at my disposal from, social media, white papers, paid ads, search, and ultimately, what generated the most leads at those companies was this outbound model of going direct to your ideal customer, your decision makers, and making a case for why it's worth carving out time to either hop on a demo or hop on an exploratory sales call. And it worked. I would pioneer this at those companies and then standardize the playbook and have reps come in and replicate that playbook. So at scale, we could generate new business for those companies.
So I know that convert.ai has managed to land some pretty big fish in the world of business, and you've seen some amazing results, and you've worked with companies like Microsoft, and things have been really exploding for you guys over the last 8 years. But I'm curious to know, when was the moment that you knew that this new venture was the future for you? Because at some point you went from working for other people's companies to launching your own thing and making this real for yourself. How did you know it was time to make the switch?
My goal always from day one, well, I guess you could say year 7 was to build a business. I am the firstborn male son of immigrant parents. So my parents forged their passports to escape communist Romania. It must have really sucked. My engineer dad hated working for a communist regime and having the state decide his fate. Just ultimately what he would do, what he would work on, how much he would make. He didn't enjoy that lifestyle enough that he risked years of jail time to escape Romania and come to the States where he could carve out his own roadshow and, pursue his own destiny of his choice. So, growing up, he never missed an opportunity to remind me of that fact. So that is to say, basically, from age 7, my dad was intent on starting his own business, but because he had a family, he took up jobs and kept moving from place to place to place. Minnesota, Florida, Arizona, Texas, all these different states. And I had to co-opt my life, move along right with the family. And, I'm in the Uhaul. It's hot and humid. We're in Florida. We're sweating. And it's just, my dad's murmuring under his breath, should have started a business. And I'm 7 years old internalizing this. I'm 7 years old hearing my dad complain about, and this was before remote work. So, I should have just started a business and carved out my own destiny, carved out my own ideal lifestyle. So that really resonated with me. My goal, I started my first website when I was 14. This is company number 4 or 5 that I've attempted. I've monetized 3 other things from scratch. This is number 4. But I The wake up call really was when I did due diligence for an angel investment group of 90 folks. So 90 people sizing up new ventures. And one of these companies was two Stanford PhD grads that built life-saving dental technology. So without going to the details, they figured out, and they even patented, a way to literally save lives with some novel new development in dental technology. And they couldn't raise financing. They could not raise a round. And the reason was because they had no viable customer acquisition channel. And I've seen that play out many times with different companies. Is they have a very compelling product and a very strong team, but they don't solve for that one, arguably most important piece, other than maybe product market fit, is a compelling distribution model, compelling channel to acquire new customers. So anyhow, having seen that play out, I left what I was doing as an engineer to master the game of distribution and acquiring new customers at scale. And I was able to do it for a couple of VC-backed companies. And after that, just set off on my own to do it for companies at scale.
Awesome. And I know that you're going to be bringing some of the wisdom that you've collected over the last 8 years to the audience today, talking about building lists, talking about adding value. But before we dive into that a little bit, just give us a sense of who you're trying to reach with the kind of the framework that you're going to share with us today. Like, who's going to benefit from using this? Who's going to benefit from applying things that you're saying? But also more broadly, like, who are you passionate about serving out there with convert.ai at the moment?
Anyone who is a B2B company, meaning a business selling into other businesses, specifically a SaaS or a service. So SaaS, software as a service, high margin. Or if you are just an agency or a service, but you're proven, you have testimonials, case studies. It's not your first foray. You have a model that works. Those can be great candidates. If I were to assign one metric to it, it's that your lifetime value is in the 5 figures, hopefully multiple 5 figures. So if you bring in one incremental client, that client in the lifetime of working together with you would represent, 15, 20, 25, 30,000, or even more, even a multiple of that in value for your firm. That's a great fit for outbound lead generation. It's certainly not a good model for a company that's only charging $50 or $100 a month. Outbound does not work for that. So, if you're like Brex, a company where you bring on one client and they represent tens of thousands of dollars in lifetime value for you, so they're high value new customers. I mean, that company scaled off the back of outbound lead generation, the work we do. So that's one example.
So we're thinking about outbound lead generation. We're thinking of a certain sense of scale. But I imagine that for people who are launching something new or they're running a new business, even though this might not immediately apply, I think this is the kind of stuff that will set the tone for them, right? Or give them some things to aim for and some context to work towards.
If you're starting from scratch and you don't have testimonials or social proof or referenceable marquee clients that you can point to and say, hey, we work with this and we work with, today we can point to SEMrush, we can point to Microsoft, we can point to other logos who saw results working with us, and even more startup, early stage, seed, Series A, Series B stage companies, which is going to resonate a lot more with someone who is a seed, a Series A, Series B, than if I name drop Microsoft. That's not going to really actually resonate. But that's neither here nor there. If you are starting from scratch, you need to lean on your background. So, hey, when I was starting this company, I leaned on my background saying, hey, I ran demand generation for a company that had raised $60 million. It was another B2B company. And I rolled out a playbook to generate new clients. And I'm happy to share notes or offer you the playbook, show you how I actually did it. And, I would reach out directly to founders or, heads of revenue with that type of messaging. And it did resonate because it represented value for them. I wasn't going into simply pitch, just go right into quota carrying pitch mode. I was trying to get my foot in the door with value and ground it in some sort of relevant work experience. In this case, hey, I've done this before for a company. I took them from 0 to 1. And I'm happy to share notes or work through how I did it. so that you do avoid these mistakes that I made. So you don't go down some windy roads or back alleys that you don't have to. I can save you weeks, if not months, from a 30-minute call.
Okay, so right at the top of this, there's a challenge really to new business owners or people who are trying to launch something new, which is try and figure out how to find your first customer by leaning into your background, because you don't have the testimonials yet, you don't have the credibility, but what you can offer is some value around solving a particular problem and trying to solve that first challenge with that first customer. So that's on kind of the one side of this discussion. And then on the other side, we've got those larger businesses, those scaling businesses where this outbound lead generation approach is really going to apply. So why don't you take us through, I think there's like 2 or 3 stops on this journey, 2 or 3 things that you want to pull out for us to take away, because we've been talking about this for a few weeks. So why don't you dive into the other side of it now, and I'll jump in if I've got any questions.
Yeah, I think, brass tacks is build the right lead list. Like that's the starting point. Number one is that you have the golden lead list. So you know your ideal customer profile. Hopefully you work backwards from anyone you've worked with in the past, and you pattern match those characteristics they have, headcount parameters, the industry they were in, the customers they serviced. The titles, the seniority and titles that you sold into in the past. If you don't have a starting point, you need to start with a hypothesis and talk to dozens of people who match that hypothesis. If you do have prior customers, well, that is your treasure trove, is the clients you would clone if you could again. Because you can, in a way, you can basically map out their characteristics, their similar traits, and target the companies that most look and act like them, that are at similar revenue ranges, similar industries, and sell into the similar titles. So number one is the golden lead list. Number two is the golden messaging. Come at them with just a few choice, punchy sentences. Make sure that they're not noisy. They're not alienating. This is part science, part art, how to craft one of these. But, value is, I would say, top of mind when I write messaging is how do I lead with an offer that's compelling and salient enough that it doesn't look like another pitchy, generic, hey, let's hop on a 15-minute call email that everyone else gets. Everyone gets dozens of emails saying, hey, can I hard sell you for 15 minutes? I'm a quota-carrying rep. I promise I won't make it too painful. Whereas if you came into the door saying something in the way of, hey, working with similar stage companies, we've developed a playbook, a framework. I can do an audit, an assessment, share swipe files. The list goes on, evaluation. The metric or the standard that I use, the barometer here that I suggest anyone use, is what I call standalone independent value. So does your value add offer standalone value that someone would actually pay for? That's my litmus test. So if you are getting your foot in the door with something that someone would pay for, to $5,000, which is the normal cost of an audit, sometimes $10,000, $15,000. And you come in saying, hey, I'm happy to give you an audit, or even a lightweight one, that message rises immediately above the noise of the sea of red ocean, just nonsense everyone else is sending, because you're leading with value. It's relevant. The executive's not dumb. They're going to know that there's a sales transactional conversation on the other side of that once they do hop on a call. But if you leave them with 2 or 3 gems on that discovery call, on that demo, on that qualification call, they're going to appreciate it. It's going to tacitly speak to your experience and your professionalism too, which will earn trust. And if you earn trust, you can ask for, and if you ask if it's top of mind, if that's a relevant pain point, a lot of the time that's going to transpire in a deal worth tens of thousands of dollars or even more. So anyways, that's the golden lead list, the right messaging, and make sure it's baked with value, that you make sure that it has standalone independent value, as I call it. And then there's just the infrastructure of deploying it day in, day out, doing it consistently. some may not think it's glamorous or glorious work, but this thing does generate results and it does build businesses. Like many businesses have been built solely off this lead channel, including Brex. So that's the way I see it. That's the way I think about it. The lead list, the messaging, and then the infrastructure to do it day in, day out and keep the train running on time.
That's it. There's so much value in what you've been explaining to us, especially that centerpiece around the value part. And you mentioned that the executive, they know that on the other side of this transaction is going to be a sales conversation. And here's the thing that I think that most people forget is that it is literally the executive's job to spend money on solutions that are going to help them. Like, that's what they actually want to do. They don't need convincing if you can demonstrate that there's value in your solution. But proving that value, you've also got to remember that they're getting, 20 sales calls every day or more, depending on how good their PA is, right?
Yeah,
Like, they're dealing with a lot of churn. They're getting options presented to them all the time. So you do need to find a way to make yours stand out by demonstrating that value off the bat. So, does it have that standalone value? If it does, you're in the right place, because it's literally their job to buy solutions. Like, that's their whole world, is to try and make things better. So I think that's such an important point. And the other thing I really loved about what you were saying there, Chris, is about how the messaging is descriptive about what you'll get. Because so many lead forms and gated pages online, they're scalping your information before they've given you any sort of indication about what you're going to get, which, even if you do then get the email address, that person's probably not going to read the email, because you've already set the tone of it not being a very productive relationship. But when you're really detailed about, look, this is the kind of stuff you're going to get. This is what I've done for other people. I've helped other businesses in this way over here. Honestly, you're going to get loads of value. So being descriptive in that messaging, helping to reveal what the person's going to get, hopefully is going to help that conversion. So leading the value, being descriptive, asking yourself, what is the standalone value I can provide, I think is so, so important. It's just going to help you stand out. You're zigging when everyone else is zagging, so to speak. Now, we've covered a lot of ground already. And as I said, loads of value in this conversation already. And we may have already covered this actually as well, but we love to finish every episode by zooming in on the one thing that people should take away and try as soon as the episode finishes, or the one thing they should take action with. Covered lots of ground. What's the first thing that people should go away and do when this episode finishes?
So think about the value add you can offer. Provided you're building the right lead list and using the right marketing channel or customer acquisition channel, the right value will make the rest of the process more forgiving. You don't have to craft every word immaculately. The right value makes up for poor copy or poor messaging. So just to sum it all up, I would ask the audience to think about the one most salient piece of value they can offer. By the way, you can have 2 or 3 of these. I do, so that way you're not repeating yourself. Just have 2 or 3 different bits of value. So one example I can offer right now is for anyone who has an outbound campaign or strategy or tooling, I'm happy to do a sanity check and audit that. And at the end of the day, what you'll get is a 10 to 20% reply rate. I have yet not to get someone that result doing a 30-minute just quick consultation, looking at what someone's doing. Because there's so many things you actually do need aligned: the list, the messaging, the infrastructure, using AI to swap words out, dozens of email inboxes. It's complex. Our SOP is 200 activities to get started. But anyways, I can give you the most salient 2 or 3 things that you should be doing with your outbound playbook to help enhance it and get you that 10, 20% lift. So think about the value, what's in it for them. And secondly, if you want to take me up on this offer, look me up on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/chmarin, CHMARIN, or you can just look up my name, Chris Marin, and I'm happy to offer up any help I can.
And for anyone who didn't have a pen in their hand ready to write down Chris's LinkedIn details, don't worry. I'll be sure to put those in the show notes so you can go and find him. And Chris, thank you for such a generous offer. I know that we've had some really interesting conversations over the last 6 weeks or so, and what you've been able to achieve for your clients is amazing. So the fact that Strategy Shorts listeners are going to be able to reach out and get some of those top line questions answered or top line bits of information challenged, I think is just awesome. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are about out of time. I feel like we could talk for a lot longer, but Chris, thank you so much for making some time for Strategy Shorts, and let's speak again soon.
It was a pleasure, Dan. Let's do it again soon.